think about East Germany and East Berlin back in the 80s and the 60s and 70s, etc. Now they made the Berlin Wall and they made all this big fuss about it. And they have the I was there when I was a kid and they had a cafe in West Berlin where they had a painting of the Berlin Wall, and they had you know barbed wire on top of it and blood draining down and the body hanging over it. It's like, okay, Berlin back then was in the middle of East Germany, West Berlin also. The city of Berlin was divided in two, to East Berlin and West Berlin, but it was seated in the dead in the middle, surrounded by East Germany, which was entirely communist. Now, why would you bother going over the wall and getting shot when you could just go north, out of East Berlin into East Germany, other areas of East Germany, then go west, then go south, then go east into West Berlin? Why would you bother crossing the wall? It doesn't make sense. They could just go around the city and then go into the other side. Now, of course, they had to, they'd have to get through checkpoints, but it'd be a hell of a lot easier than it would to go over the wall. And before the wall was built, people traveled to West Berlin to get out of the communist. So the West Berlin government wasn't against people going in there. So it would have been relatively easy. So why would they bother building that wall? People in East Berlin. Okay, there were other people in East Germany that could go into West Berlin. They had to have identification and whatnot, but I mean, they could still sneak in there, couldn't they? Or, go in through the checkpoint, just like they used to come over before the wall was built, from East Berlin to West Berlin. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Now, was it just a bullshit? Was it just something that they set up to make it as a symbol so that Reagan could, put down protesters with bayonets and then act like the big anti-communist, while the Frankfurt model is in every fucking university? The communist Frankfurt model, training every professional in the fucking country, no matter what field. You have to get a degree from the communist Frankfurt model to work in America as a professional. And this was going on, and Reagan's all big anti-communist, though. And then he's tear this wall down, and then they tear the wall down, and then all of a sudden Russia fragments into a whole bunch of warring states. Now, why the fuck would that happen? It sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me, is what it fucking sounds like when I look back on it. Why would tearing that wall down suddenly mean that the USSR's got to disband suddenly, and then all the states go into a war and become independent? Okay, now, say that was just a big fucking, just a political media ruse, indoctrinational ruse. And now everybody has been programmed and mind control and fucking gay worship in America. We lost our votes. You can't have your own opinion about things if it's against the indoctrinated opinion, especially about things that are of a moral and religious principle and that have to do with basic, obvious fact and basic, obvious emotional and psychological, basis and physical basis and connection to the universe basis. XY and XX chromosomes. You're not allowed to be reasonable about things. You're not allowed to be excellent. You're not allowed to have your own beliefs. You're not allowed to excel beyond what the system says is possible or what has been done already. Unless you are already a very rich, unless you are making money corrupt and invading other people's privacy, or you are building off of what's already been done, then you are not allowed to succeed. And if you have a business that outdoes the established multinational businesses, then you are going to be oppressed utterly until you learn or until you submit to serving them. Now, we're not even okay. This is the only country in the world that I know of. It's the only place where you aren't allowed to walk on foot where you want to go. The land of the free. You can't walk down the highway to the next city if you want to and camp on the side of the road. It's illegal. You know, in Europe, they've got squatters' rights. You can camp on someone's land. I don't know if I agree with that. But if it's either that or not be allowed to walk down the highway, if you feel the wanderlust or you have a record and you can't get a job and you figure I'm going to get on the move and I don't have any fucking money, but I'm going to go, you aren't allowed to. Not in America. You will be put in jail repeatedly until you get government housing. Is what you will fucking do. You will rely on the government. Now, that's America, and don't tell me it fucking ain't. The only other place I can think that walking down the highway on your own 2 feet where you want to go is illegal would be Nazi's fucking Germany, if they even prohibited that. Which they probably didn't. They might have, but they might not have. Now, don't tell me we've got freedom. The only people who are free in America are first. If the only way you have freedom is if you are a business owner who makes your own income and your own products, and you don't, and even then, if they decide, hey, we don't want to, work with this guy anymore because he's not playing ball the way America wants, he's not thinking what we want him to think, then we'll stop doing manufacturing for him. We'll stop, doing business with him. We'll stop distributing, etc. But if you've got a business where you don't have to do that, you don't have too many other cooperational businesses, and you've got a business where you're making your own product or your own service or whatever, and you make your income that way, and you don't have anyone who can fire you, then you're basically free. You can say what you want. You can handle things. If someone is against you, you can go up and rebuke them. But if you have a job where you have management over you, and you go and rebuke somebody, or you go out and preach or whatever you need to do for your faith, for who you are, to maintain, then all people have to do is call law and you say, that is disturbing peace or that's harassing me. Especially in a commonwealth. No proofs required. You are going to have a charge on your record because you are accused, regardless of whether or not you are found innocent in court. And if you aren't found innocent in court because of whatever reason, the lawyer screws you, you don't have enough proof to prove yourself innocent, or they've got a whole bunch of different accusations and they force you into a plea bargain, then you aren't going to work. Nobody's going to hire you. It doesn't matter whether you're guilty. It just matters whether your charge is listed, if it's something like harassment. Because every business has phones and computers, and they don't want to take the risk of someone coming and harassing people on their phones and computers and them getting sued. And they will not hire you. Even if it's an innocent verdict. And they've got policies that they won't hire you if you get in a fist fight. Or any kind of misdemeanor such as harassment. Or anything like that. Policy is you will not get hired for 7 years. As long as it's on your record. So, that is wage slavery. See, and that's why they enslaved Africans. Under hard bondage. See, in the Bible, that kind of slavery is called hard bondage. What they call slavery in the Bible, if you look up the Hebrew for it, and Greek, it says waged working. To work for wages. That was considered slavery in the 1500s when the Bible was translated. It was considered slavery. So what they did is they associated our idea of slavery with what they called in the Bible hard bondage, which is where you don't get paid and you get your ass whipped if you don't do the work. That's hard bondage. See, and that's what the Africans were put through, the African Americans, their ancestors, the people that the Americans and the it wasn't the British, but the Americans stole and bought from Africa and enslaved, or rather put under hard bondage. And they did that so they could forever associate it in our minds the term slavery with hard bondage. And what used to be considered slavery before then is just the way of life, just every day. That's just how it goes. And you might say, what's wrong with working? No, I like to have a job. I do. I really love to have a job. But the fact is, I can't have one. I can't make money because I got accused of a crime. You see? Because I had a business that outdid in quality the major ones. And also was not constrictive. See, the music business has more rules in it than the fire department did. When I worked at the fire department, there were a perfect amount of rules to make sure everything was safely done. But you had enough leeway to do your job. See, in the music business, there was way more stringent rules to what they wanted you. You had to follow these rules to make the music. More stringent than the fire department, than fighting fire. Something of safety and hazard and to rescue. Something dangerous. Had less rules than art, than personal expression. You see, and when I had my label, there weren't any rules like that. It was personal expression, and I worked with people that I believed in. And they were better than the major labels, acts. So I got my business got hit. I got my ex-girlfriend accused me and put me under charge, and I lost my career. And I lost all my money, and I lost my business. See, they set me up. And now I can't do anything. I can't work. I can't earn money because I can't get a job. I haven't been able to for 8 years. And I'm broke. And now I'm so wore out and torn to pieces that I don't really care about anything. And I've been so shit on. And every time I talk to a woman, they would have me arrested. Or they would call the cops on me and have me kicked off the property. No matter what it was. If I just, was talking to them, just casual conversation. Or asked them, hey, you need me to help you carry this? I mean, that wasn't a tone of voice I had. Now I'm pissed off, but, just cordially asking her whether she needed some help, because she looked like she was having trouble carrying stuff. She called the cops. Had me kicked off campus. That's most of the town. Talked to one girl, she called the cops, said I was acting strangely, because she didn't want to give me her phone number or something. I didn't ask for her phone number. Or I didn't, that's why, because I didn't ask for it. I guess, something. I don't know what the fuck. And I found out one time I went into a store and talked to the manager for 15 minutes. And there was a young girl over there. And I talked to the manager for like 15 minutes. We had a great conversation. And next day I came back, and the girl who worked there, who I knew, told me I wasn't allowed back in there because the young girl had complained about me. And she insinuated that it was because I didn't tell her how beautiful she was. And I told her she was beautiful, so she said I was harassing her. Made her feel harassed. And kicked me out of the store. I wasn't allowed back in to see my friend, who is now not my friend anymore. So I've been so utterly mistreated by women. And someone I knew for 18 years tried to set me up, had me killed the other week. Which I avoided. She called and told me that, though I'd missed her when I came by her house, she wanted me to know that she wasn't avoiding me, and that she still considered me a friend, and she wanted to come visit. Then 5 minutes later, she calls again, and my mama hands me the phone, and then some guy who's with her starts screaming at me, telling me he's going to kill me, and that I need to stay away from her because she feels threatened. I'm like, huh? And I made him give her the phone so she could tell me he wasn't snatching it from her. And she told me she gave him the phone. And I was thinking, so I was like, she's either trying to set me up or she's in danger and being intimidated. So I better check things out. And I went and I did the exact thing to do to make sure she had maximum protection if she was being intimidated, and also to protect myself to make sure I didn't get set up. But it turned out I was getting set up. She was trying to set me up, but I made it so I didn't get set up. But someone did threaten me with a gun. But I was, the way it went down, they didn't get to pull off their plan, which was to apparently to shoot me. And I don't have any proof, and they'll all lie, so I didn't report it. And this is how women treat me. Because I should, 8 years of my business running, me working 16 hours a day, I would be rich. And all those bands would be successful. But because goddamn bitch set me up, my ex-girlfriend, that's all women do with me now. That's all they fucking think of me. Just some fucker, some fuck up to set up. Unless I'm beating the shit out of people in front of them, then they'll, be halfway decent to me sometimes. As long as I'm harsh to them. As long as I ain't loving to them. So I'm utterly bitter because I wanted love and marriage. Life will never be happy for me. It will be pleasurable once I get money, I guess. Once I get above all this, but it won't ever be happy. Not deep down. Sure, I'll have a good damn time. Mm. Lovely time. Not lovely, but I'll have a hell of a fucking time. And I shouldn't say damn or hella, but I'll have a pleasant, pleasurable time. Why don't you leave for a minute? I'm trying to finish something.
I will. I got my phone call.
Well, why don't you make it upstairs? Yeah. Anyway. So, that's how it goes when you have business that, that's America for you. Everyone's so sublimated by the society, which is completely, subverted to the Frankfurt model, because every professional career requires a degree from the Frankfurt model. So all institutions are completely saturated with Frankfurt model belief, and all trends and all business. So they're all in all of that mindset, and and there ain't supposed to be a sixth sense, but we have it. We get an idea of something, we can feel certain things, and their minds are trained to interpret these things in a certain manner. Thus, if you are put under by those who control the society, everybody will serve them to the core instantly, and they will do whatever is necessary to keep you down for them. Now, this being so, and this being so fucking awful, and even people who are subverted hate it. They're just scared to stand up against it because they don't want to be under the cult of America. And now we've lost our votes, and and we got Michael Jordan acting like the fact that there's male and female bathrooms is some sort of like the equivalent of a concentration camp, crying about it. Now, is that what's really going on, or is he crying for some other reason fronting? Is his family being threatened to say that shit? Or is he really that big of a fucking idiot? An asshole? I used to think he was a great guy. High school, I had great respect for him. He had his own clothing line, his own shoe line. He was considered the best basketball player in the world. Also was good enough to be a professional baseball player. I thought he was a top-notch motherfucker. Of course, back then I believed that, though society was evil, I didn't think everything was utterly corrupt. They just released like 15 new innovative bands who were of the best quality of music that was out there. So, I thought, there was some, that, hey, there's good stuff going on. There is good stuff being supported. It's not utterly corrupt. But now it is not being supported. Nothing good is being supported. It's all utterly, utterly, utterly corrupt to the utmost. Now, we have this in America, where nobody complains about anything in society except what they are, what is okay, what is stamped as okay by the government to complain about. One party or the other, basically, for the most part. Or you've got your conspiracy things, and some of that's true and some of it isn't. Yeah, I mean, they go on about the Masons. Most of the conspiracy sites and whatnot and films will always talk about the Masons. And the Masons, sure, they're most likely involved. I mean, definitely. They're involved to some degree. But they aren't the only faction. Everyone's ignoring voodoo. Everyone's ignoring werewolves. They don't understand that werewolves exist. And that's understandable because we've been taught that they were fiction. We've been taught that they're impossible. But they do exist. Shape-shifting exists. Sorcery exists. And it's used constantly. It is indoctrinated into our psychology to use sorcery. And they tell us it's just the way the brain functions. They teach us that sorcery is just the way the brain functions, and just the way social interaction functions. It's so deeply ingrained, and but you're not allowed to believe that it exists, and you're called insane if you do. Now, this is going on to such a degree that Vladimir Putin, who was a KGB agent under communism, a secret police agent, is now standing for American rights in communist Russia, or in Russia. He is representing conservative values. He is representing biblical value. He is representing basic decency. And America has gone so far into corrupt mind control, perversion, and just absolute debauchery and absolutely immoral. Absolutely no sense of moral or compassion for anyone who is not making money or in line with the system. If you are out of line with the system, you are not human to these people. You are a circuit board to control until you get back in line. Because the way that our institutions have thoroughly saturated our way of thinking. Now, the Nazi Germany sent the Frankfurt School over here because they were kicked out because they were communists, and communists weren't allowed in Nazi Germany. And that's allegedly. That's what they told us. And then they came over here. And then after the war, a bunch of Nazi scientists came over here. And a bunch of Nazi scientists went over to Russia. Supposedly, we took the spoils of the Nazi scientists. But we put them, the Nazi scientists being the spoils of war. And then we put them in the upper echelons of our scientific communities over the scientific departments in the Frankfurt Model School system. Them and their progenies. The Frankfurt School did F-scale tests to test, and this in the 1950s, to test, or early 60s, to test, I think it was late 50s, to test how conducive the American public was to fascism. And then they put the Frankfurt Model School system into effect in 1969 or 1970, which was protested, and then Reagan put him down by bayonets, and then claims to be a big anti-communist. Now, was this a long-term ploy? Did Russia completely take over Europe during World War II, and we weren't told about it? Did Germany take over? Did Germany have some technology that just stunned everybody still when they came to Germany, and they just explained to us how it's going to be? And the Russians too? Did they come up with some big plan to dominate the entire world through their scientists? Or did they lose? And then have this plan to send the scientists over to corrupt everything? And then they right down to Brazil, and then Brazil forwarded them to Russia, so they were in communication. The Russian Nazi scientists and the American Nazi scientists that the Russians took and the Americans took. Did they correspond constantly and set up a plan to overthrow America? And the Russians, being communist and totalitarian, also not putting up with what we put up with. But, once the Nazi scientists stepped out of line, they got tortured and then thus became subject. And then they wrote to the Nazi scientists over here and came up with a big plan to take over America. Is that what happened? Is that what's going on? Is it all a propaganda thing? Is it something they decided to make American life so utterly enslaved in our very minds? So utterly enslaved in our beliefs. So utterly enslaved in every fucking sense. That you cannot prosper unless you are underneath the mind control subversion. And then you will only prosper as much as they tell you. And it's basically you'll get a payoff for selling your soul. The blasphemous final solution. They're indoctrinating blasphemy against the spirit through media and through the school system. Is this to make life so fucking unlivable in America that when Putin or some communist dictator offers to take us over, that we don't fight it? Are they going to use Arab insurgents? Nazis were in collusion with the Muslims. They were allies. Many of them. And what about China? What happened after World War II with China? And as far as, Japan was attacking them. Japan was brutalizing China. And we knocked them out, supposedly, with Hiroshima. If that really even happened. What are those streams in the sky? Almost every time you watch a nuclear blast, they've got little wires of smoke in the air right before it goes off. What is that? Even when they set off the 500 tons of TNT, it wasn't nuclear, but it was a comparable blast. They had sideways little streams of smoke in the sky. What the fuck were those? What are those? What do they have to do with a massive blast detonation? I've seen starships in the sky. Not that's a related subject, but it is to the nukes. Perhaps starships look like stars. Two stars in the sky dropped down and just glided across the sky together without streaking. And they look just like stars. I've been on Air Force bases since I was a kid. Or from the time I was 2 years old to the time I was 12. I saw tons of planes. I know what a plane looks like. All right? I know what a helicopter looks like. These were neither. And they were way up there, and they just glided across the sky. Like the entire half of the sky within a couple of seconds. Without streaking, though. And they looked carefree. They had a kind of emotion to them. And I looked stuff up, and I found that some scientists have said the same thing, except theirs kind of loop around. And they said the same thing I said, that they thought they were demonic ships. Even, non-Christian scientists, that's what they thought. And they said there was an emotion to it. So I'm not the only one who's seen them. What are those? Did the Nephilim fly up after or right before the flood and live on the moon? Or out in space? Are those from Nazis? Are they our government's technology that's up in the sky? Up in the stratosphere or outside the atmosphere? Are they aliens? I don't really believe in aliens. But it's possible. but I don't think so. I'm pretty certain that they belong to either demons that were here and left before the flood. That's what I tend to believe. It's what it seems like, or it is government technology. I know there's ethereal technology that is not corporal. It is not physical. It's invisible, and they have different types of, you know, they can they bloop bloop. They'll pinpoint you and get inside your head and bloop, and they've targeted you. I don't think. I mean, I'm not sure what it is, but I tend to think that it's ethereal technology. I don't know who owns it or who designed it. It's kind of off subject. Let's get back. Is after World War II, did Russia take over all of Europe? And are they slowly? Did they take us over too? But they knew the American populace wouldn't put up with it, so they've slowly indoctrinated to make us accept it by making life so utterly fucking miserable and so nonsensically stupid, sick, and perverse, and lacking love, and lacking truth, and lacking any content whatsoever besides material, that we would give ourselves to the Russian dictators when they come over. Or is it that Putin is being smart? Is it that because the Coast Guard took pictures and witnessed God raining fire from the sky back in 2008 outside of Oak Island, North Carolina, which I saw with my own two eyes, and I know they saw it. You couldn't miss it. It was red like coals in the sky for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And there were ships out there. And 2 jets of fire shot from the sky to the ground, to the sea, around those ships. Those ships were out there when that happened. There were 2 ships, you could see them. And it was clearly jets of fire, like from a huge mile-high flamethrower that shot a jet of fire 250 foot wide. But it went from the sky to the sea instantly. And then after the second one, there was a huge bolt of lightning. Now I know that the Coast Guard took note of this, and I know the government knows about it. And not just the American government, but we have world government, and that's evident when you try and find pictures of Joseph Mengele with the 2 twins. He took the top of their heads off. And he took the top of their heads off with their brains exposed, 2 twins, and they were sitting there, and they were adults, and he had diodes stuck in their brains, and he was doing studies on them. He'd cut one, see if the other felt it, etc., etc. He was doing mind control or mental and mind control studies without any ethics whatsoever. And they will not show that picture on the internet. It's nowhere on the internet. Not even if you go to the Auschwitz site. And when I was there, when I was a kid, we took a tour of the concentration camp, and the room about Joseph Mengele, that was the main picture. And if you look up Joseph Mengele and you look for that picture on the internet, it's nowhere in the world. They do not allow it on the internet. And it's not just American. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't been over to Japan or over to Europe and looked it up on the internet. Maybe they just block the sites that have it in America, but sites from other countries do not have it either. You go to the Auschwitz site, it's not there. It is nowhere. So that leads me to believe we're already under world government, which also supports the idea that America has already been taken over and is being, has been for the last 50 years, 60 years conditioned, 70 years conditioned into absolute mindless heartless sickness so that we would allow ourselves to be taken over when they come. But maybe Putin is being smart. Maybe he heard about the fire raining from the sky. Maybe his intelligence officers told him what they got from the American intelligence. Or maybe our country went and had meetings with other countries and told them, look at these pictures. Look what happened. God's going to destroy. He's going to rain fire. And maybe Putin is the only one being smart in democratic societies, or what they call Western society, even though Russia is Far East. He's making homosexuality illegal. Perversion illegal. Instead of something you over here you absolutely have to accept it. Not and most people aren't even satisfied if you just say, well, that's what they want to do, as long as they stay away from me with it. It's not good enough. You have to accept it into yourself and into your life as something good and normal, and that's just the rhetoric. What they really want is you to say it's better. And they want you to say it's part of your sexuality. They want you to say that, on the one hand, they want you to say there's nothing disgusting about it. They want you to say that there is nothing wrong with it. They want you to say that it is acceptable and honest. And in doing so, and in everyone doing so, they say that you are a fake person, and you are dishonest, immature, and don't know yourself if you don't accept bisexuality as part of the standard norm for every human in existence to have some. And because they do not allow, they do not believe that purely heterosexuality exists, even though it's obviously the natural state. And they know it, and they don't care, because they were forced, so they're going to force your ass too. Otherwise, they hate you out of envy. So, Putin might just be being smart. Or maybe it's both. Maybe he's like, well, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can win the conscience of American people and avoid Russia getting burned by God. Because America, what did we do? God, shows he's going to rain fire. I start preaching, and what do? Well, that means we got to go against all the votes in the country. Voted twice. Once for the states to decide, and then every state voted. All but 14 decided against it. And they said, well, no, that's not going to happen. 17 people say they're upset about it. Political activists. And that means that your vote doesn't matter. You are going to accept gay marriage. It is legal, not only legal, but it is something that you have to accept as viable and normal. And we're going to put gay shit in the news all the time on the internet. At least on Yahoo. But it's still being tolerated, isn't it? It ain't something anyone complains about. It ain't something anyone does anything about. They put little kids, they dress up like the opposite sex, say they're a teenager when they obviously aren't. Little toddlers dressed up like the opposite sex. They're being taken from them completely. Not allowed to be themselves at all, because they pointed at a Barbie when they were 2 or something, and then, or like Pink, supposedly. So they're not allowed to be who they are. and they're abused and shopped to their child molester rings on the internet. And nobody says a thing, and nobody cares. Instead, they say those parents are standing up for their kids' rights. That's how fucking evil and corrupt people are. And everyone pretends that they're actually, 15, 16, when those pictures are obviously between 3 and 10 years old. And I mean, I'm not assuming. When I saw that first one, I was like, man, there's no way that's 15. And I typed in his name and transgender kid, and then lo and behold, there was a picture of him when he was 15. He looked like a regular 15-year-old guy, except for the fact that he was wearing a wig and a dress. His stance and his face looked like a normal 15-year-old. But they had a little picture of him when he was 7, and saying he was 15. And I know. I mean, any little boy looks like a little girl if he's wearing makeup. My sister nagged me into dressing up. I looked like a little girl when I had a makeup on, once or twice, which I hated, but she never stops. And I grew up perfectly straight, handsome, and maximum testosterone. So it's no fucking excuse just because you put makeup on a little boy and it looks like a little girl. Kids are naturally androgynous. That's how that works. But, they've been doing it since the 70s. They didn't tell anybody because back in the, 70s and 80s, people would have shot them or skinned them alive for doing that to their kid. And then they started feeding them estrogen at 12 years old. Told everyone they did it when they were 16. Started feeding them, get hormone blockers and feed them estrogen at 12. So, and then in the 90s and 2000s, they start showing them, put them on TV, having, show them around town. People get fooled because they've been taking estrogen since puberty. And, everyone's like, oh, it's a woman inside, got fucked up, oh. And then everyone got used to it, everyone got fooled, everyone got subverted. And they pull little tricks like, having a real woman and say that's a transsexual. Or like there was a news, something in the news where they had this muscular chick dressed in this thing. She was a bodybuilder chick. And then they showed the same outfit with this super beautiful chick to make you think, that first one was transvestite, but it was a bodybuilder chick, just to fuck with your discernment. And that subverts people, so they lose discernment, and then they start using imagination to enhance. So people get subverted, and then when they finally subverted everybody, after 5 years of putting gay shit in every film almost, also, they finally say, okay, well, we've been doing this to kids since the 70s or early 80s, but people would have killed us back then. But now they see that we've conditioned them to the fruits of it, to accept the fruits of it, and now we'll show them, because everyone thinks God fucked up, so we'll just show them the kids. And then people are like, oh, they're obviously born a woman in a different body, oh Michael Jordan, oh. And and then say their parents are heroes standing up for them because they look like a fucking little girl when they're a little boy with makeup on, like any other little boy would. Just complete abuse, and they're acting like it's something that's standing up for the kids' rights. It's utterly fucking despicable, satanic bullshit, and God is going to burn this fucking world, except maybe Russia. And it's sad, because I loved this country, okay? Before this, there were problems. I always had problems with society and with the world. But I thought it was forging a more perfect union. I hated the fact that it was slavery. I hated the fact that they massacred Native Americans. And that was basically the way our country was set up. And, the Constitution says to forge a more perfect union. So I had hope that we could form a more perfect union, but we obviously have not. It's sure we're not openly enslaving people violently. We're not openly massacring, but we're destroying souls and we're using mind control constantly till it's just completely just emptiness and agony and shit. And people just run around, with absolutely no fucking substance in their life. And all the best things are just considered fake. And Putin is the only world leader who is standing up. And he's either doing it so they can take over America, or he's doing it to avoid being destroyed. And because he knows it's right. So, just think about that shit.